Hello nerd boys and girls, welcome to Prime Mover. Prime Mover is a relatively new game. It released about a month ago, I believe. It's made by 4-Bit Studios, and since it's so relatively new and I guess it caters to a certain niche, there aren't many videos about it yet, so I thought, let's create one myself. I've been playing this game for a couple of days now. Bought it over the weekend, so I've played a couple of levels, some tutorials, some first tries, some tutorials still, yes, and I've recently made some components for the Maximum, the reverser. Prime Mover is a game about solving puzzles. I won't be going through the very basics, but every puzzle is built up as follows. You have a description of the puzzle, you have a certain set of inputs and an expected output, one or more, and it's your job to use these tools to move the inputs to the output. So here we need to determine the sign of a number. So when we get a negative number, we need to output -1. When we get a positive number, we need to output +1. And this machine does that. This is one of the first puzzles where you can get creative with the components that are given to you. So here we have a component that splits inputs into parts being 0, parts being negative, parts being positive. And this is a extension board. The grid, as you see it, is 8x8, and you can place as many of these extensions as you want. Then you get an additional 7x7 board. Each 7x7 board has 4 in or outputs, 4 wires running into it, and here you get to use another board if you want. We got a negative number, so it went into the negative side. This contraption here keeps on subtracting or adding 1 to it until it is a 0, and then we subtract another 1 from it, so we get -1, which is the sign of a negative number. Also speed things up a bit. And there we have it, -1 going to my output. Whenever a number is moved to the output, it releases the lock that's in place here, so that the next number runs through the machine. And we have 2 of these machines, one for negative and one for positive numbers, doing virtually the same. Run for a while, and eventually you get to see, when you succeed, you get to see how well your machine does on cycles and on components compared to others in a histogram view, which might be familiar if you played Zectronics games, for example. This game is described as a Zec-like, so think about Spacecam or Infinifactory or TIS-100, Shenyan IO. Games like that will also, after solving it, present you with a sort of measure on how well you did it. I'm a great fan of those games, and so far I'm really digging Prime Mover as well. This is a bit of a medium score, but it's still my first playthrough. Let's just solve problems and worry about optimizing later. Alright, so what I really wanted to show is my solution for Maximum. Maximum is a quite common puzzle in this sort of puzzle games. You get 2 inputs and we only want a higher one of the 2. this machine is built up from several components. When we get the inputs, they are duplicated here and here, then they are stored. I have a memory cell here that stores it and releases it when a control signal is given, and the control signal enters from the bottom here. The control signal can either be positive or negative, and when it's a negative control signal, that means that the other one was bigger, so it releases... no, wrong way around. When it's a negative control signal, it means that this number stored here is the bigger one. So when the control signal comes in, it toggles the switch. Whatever is held there will be routed to the output instead of to this delete here, and then the signal will move on to actually release it, and the signal destroys itself. When the control signal is positive, this is the smaller number, and the number is released to be destroyed immediately. This cell stores the D value, and it is basically the same, except that it has its positive and negative control signal reversed. So when a positive enters here, the number is released, and when a negative enters here, it is destroyed. But how do I determine the control signal? That is done here. As you can see, the inputs are copied here, so the number 2, for instance, in the B input gets held up here until the other one gets here, then it's released, stored here, and is delivered to this machine for determining the control signal. So the 2 enters here and the 10 enters here. The 2 enters from the bottom, so here we have the 2, and 2 is put to this clock. We subtract 1 from it, and when it reaches 0, it releases this number. This is also a sort of clock, which also continuously subtracts 1 from it. So by the time it gets released, because this one is hit 0, we either have a positive or a negative number on this line, where a negative denotes that the number in the on the D track, which came in from above, is smaller than the number from the B track. And when we have a positive number here, the D track was bigger than the B track. So the B gets destroyed, the D becomes our control signal, which is now either positive or negative, or in the case of the 1 we see here, when the 1 is put into B, there is also a 1 put into D, so they're equal, and then we have a 0. Zeros don't play very well with these kinds of switches. There are only 3 inputs and outputs. We can't connect anything to the 4th side here. That's a difficulty, kind of a difficulty threshold that the developer has put in on purpose to have us deal with it, and I've dealt with it. There's a plus here because this clock subtracts 1 too many from it, so when we have this 2 and 10, we would expect an 8 here, but we got a 7, so it gets increased by 1. But we could also, when we have these ones here, we could also have a 0 here. So it we minus 1 gets plussed again and a 0. This machine is a little component that stops zeros on the line where we want a plus or a negative, a positive or a negative number. So the number comes in here and is routed into this one, into this machine, which toggles this switch. Please remember that. When it's a positive number, it gets released and nothing happens. When it's a negative number, it gets released and nothing happens. Both sides send out a copy of themselves to this one that resets the switch. The switch got toggled on the way in. When it's a 0, the switch got toggled and it's pushed back. But because we switched, and this switch is in kind of a reverse position, but the numbers can travel across it in its reverse position, so switch gets toggled and we add 1. So any 0 coming in becomes plus 1. And at this point we no longer have zeros on this line, but we can distinguish between 0 and +1. However, when this machine yields a 0, it means that both inputs are the same. So these memory cells will at that point contain the same number. And since we have a positive or a negative control signal determining which one gets released, that's irrelevant when they are the same. It doesn't matter which one gets released, as long as one is released and one is destroyed. So that's my way of dealing with zeros in this particular scenario. Whenever we have an output, it gets duplicated. One output moves to C and the other output moves to this locking mechanism, releasing a new D, and the D picks up a new B, and the whole cycle starts again. Let's have a look at how this actually works. Here B is stopped until D comes in. They both move towards the storage areas where B is held up and D is held up, and then we have this clock part. We can see now that the D side is bigger than the B side. We check for zeros, which this isn't. Switch gets restored for the next check. We release the 2 to be destroyed, and we release the 10 to be output. Same goes for these two numbers, but it takes a while longer because there are way higher values in this clock component here. There we go. And the same goes for these. And I want to pause it for a second, at least I want to pause it when the ones move in. Now we will see how this zero scraper works. We have a -1 which gets plused. 1 and 1 are equal to each other. Here we have the cancelling of the zeros. No control signal is sent here because it automatically toggles the switch itself twice. And we now release this one and destroy this one. It's kind of arbitrary which one gets released. So there you have it. This is how my maximizer works. Just see it run for a while longer. That's a shame with the integrated circuit boards. You can't actually see anything move when the numbers are in the circuits. That's kind of a shame because mostly here, by the way, a lot is happening. Okay, so far from this video, I hope you got an idea of what prime mover is, and I hope this solution here looks interesting to you. I had a lot of fun solving it, and maybe I'll see you next time. Okay, I'll definitely see you next time. This machine needs a lot of optimizing. Thanks for watching.